Let's turn to this now. President Cyril Ramaphosa has hit back at critics who dubbed his SONA address as a wonderland disconnected from the country's reality to focus on the past. This afternoon, he responded to the debate on his State of the Nation address in Cape Town. MPs have criticized the president's view of Newzroom, a fictional character who is a beneficiary of government's programs since democracy. Ramaphosa says South Africa's past of colonialism and apartheid cannot be wished away.
In the State of the Nation speech or address, we reflected on the last 30 years because the past does enable us to understand the present, and it inspires the actions we must take to build the future. So we cannot forget the past, even if we wanted to. The past that we've been through as a nation, having gone through colonialism and apartheid over 342 years, has left deep scars in many of our people. And those scars are not going to be washed away or wished away.
Our president says although some challenges remain, South Africans' lives have improved under democracy. Professor Siphamandla Zondi, a UJ Politics and International Relations professor, joins us now for more on that. Prof, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. There's a thing called the psychology of the electorate. Right? Do you think the African National Congress, even its president, are working with that thing? Are they looking at it? Do they know how to pull on the strings of the psychology and the mind of the electorate and what they're thinking in how they are crafting these messages in terms of the State of the Nation address?
Yes, good evening. It's unfortunately the task of political leaders to try and get to the heart of a voter while persuading the mind of the voter, and perhaps stir a little bit the emotions of the voter so that they can take them along. Be it in relation to the story they want to tell, a narrative they want to generate, such as the narrative that we see now, or be it is goals and plans for the future, things that are going to be done. And that is the task that faced the president, this being the last SONA just before elections. He needed to get to the citizen as a voter and not as a citizen, and try and persuade them that there is a story that his party must take credit for, and perhaps maybe may deserve to be looked upon as a party that has made a significant and a fruitful effort to change the lives of South Africans. That is why the president, being a president of a party that is an incumbent party, in order to make that, he must stretch the story and not be about the last 5 years, yes, which is what the stretching is about, but take it all the way to 30 years so that we can take all the credit of the Ella years, the Beg years, the Zuma years, and all these years, and put it all together so that in aggregate terms, it looks very big, it looks massive.
Yeah. So, I mean, say what you may about the narrative and its substance, but do you think then he successfully managed to sway the debate more than to be about the current state of the nation? People just ended up discussing Newzroom and they're born free and whether or not their lives are significantly better 30 years on than they were 30 years ago.
Yes, it was a great attempt using the Newzroom story, which is to pick out a positive story. And which is okay, for a government party, you have to pick out a positive story, which is pick up one, maybe out of 10 people or out of 8 people that has a positive story to tell and that. And secondly, usefully in conditioning the debate. Now, a lot of these opposition parties were responding to this narrative. Whether they respond positive or negative to it, it matters that then the president was leading the discussion, leading the narrative, setting the terms of the conversation. That was good. But whether this has also affected public conversations in society generally, I listen to radio where the people are talking about all sorts of general things. They just remained negative. They just remained very concerned, very worried about basic living conditions, because unfortunately, the master stroke of a narrative that was given on Thursday is undone by the announcement of load shedding, escalation of load shedding on Friday. And then the usual problems crop up. So unfortunately, people don't eat narratives, don't eat ideas, but they make judgment on the basis of their lived experience. The best thing government of President Ramaphosa could have done, and that's what we've said right from the word go, to persuade people in 2024. This government needed to perform in 2019, 2020, all the way to 2023, so that it uses the reality of how much change has happened in significant way, using their hold of state power, instead of persuading people about history, which is from the last 30 years. Unfortunately, an incumbent government is the one that undermines itself, because it has 5 years to campaign. It doesn't have 3 months like other parties to campaign.
So there are some who have come to the defense of the president, at least some of the ministers, to say, you are also talking about a 6th administration, if you're looking at just that administration, that had COVID. It's unlike any other administration that would have had that. You're talking about an administration that would have to deal with geopolitical conflicts that have been taking place, which could have affected the price of oil, for example, and would have messed around with inflation and so on and so forth, and hence the interest rates sitting at where they are. And therefore, you're talking with an administration that has been trying to trigger economic recovery, and now we are beginning to see some green shoots of that, and you'd have some premiers coming to tell you what they have achieved in their various provinces.
Yeah, that's a narrative, but we know the reality. The reality is no government faced a crisis such as the government of President Beki in the last term, because you had the September 11 attacks in the United States that leads to a war on terror. It puts the whole world and the world economy into jeopardy. And that ends with a global financial crisis that begins at the end of the Mbeki era and undermines the Zuma era. The Zuma era also had a devastating global geopolitics, very negative geopolitics and all that. The Mbeki area was facing a huge problem of HIV/AIDS, which we're not managing very well. And just like this current one was facing COVID-19. So various administrations have faced major domestic challenges, major international challenges, but they were hard pressed to show what effort have they made with billions and hundreds of billions that are in their bank account, with the levers of state power, with the ability to build relationships with the private sector. How to use all of that capital and capability to increase and improve lives of people, at least to an extent that is relatable to a crisis. You should be able to show that we improved in the 5 years, not in the 30 years. We have improved access to water and access to clean water by 10 factor. We could have improved it by 14 if there was no crisis of this nature. We have increased access to quality education. So now more and more students are able to get into universities because we have built another university. President Zuma could say that we built 2 universities, but this one's come. So it is easy, understandable why it's part of the electionary period that the current administration will talk up the challenges that it has faced, but be a little short on the practical progress that they have made that can be measurable. So that you don't have a Dinswalo to talk about, but Dinswalos themselves speak for themselves that not in the past 30 years, but in the last 5 years, our lives have become better.
And overall, I mean, does this performance in the last 3 days help towards propping up, I suppose, their campaign message for 2024, or has it necessarily done the opposite?
Yes, I think that was the intention, to begin the messaging for the ANC towards the electorate, which is simply to say, yes, there are difficulties, but the lives have become better for people over the last 30 years. But what we are saying is what Zuma said, is what Mbeki said. He said all that. What we are not doing is to tell enough of a news story of this particular administration, that this is how much it has done to improve the lives of people. For example, could have said, whereas in the past administration, the rate of reduction of poverty was about 1%. In this administration, it is 1.8%. It has increased a little. As a result, we are taking so many people out of poverty. We put so many people into jobs. We've got so many people cushioned from the worst of poverty and all. So tell us about what in the last 5 years was achieved in relation to quality of life, so that your enemies do not say, you said there was 9 wasted years before you, but now you have added 5 wasted years in relation to the quality of life of the people. There are stories that you could have put out to do that. There are areas of progress you could have put out to do that. Sometimes it is the packaging. But unfortunately, the reality is that things have been very slow in changing. And in relation to the socio-economics, it is where people are experience the change. We can talk about big aggregates. Agricultural exports have increased. Our trade with everybody else has increased. But if it has not translated to better cities, better communities, better townships, less informal settlement, then it is stories. It is in reality for some of those people.
Professor Siphamandla Zondi, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for your analysis tonight. UJ Politics Professor there.